Before 6 people died at Hinterkaifeck, footprints crossed the snow toward the farm. No tracks ever led away. The farm stood alone in rural Bavaria, far from town, hidden behind fields, woods, and a long winter road. Andreas Gruber lived there with his family, including 7-year-old Cecilia, in a house that had begun to feel watched. The previous maid quit months earlier. She said the farm was haunted and she would not sleep there again. On March 31st, 1922, a new maid arrived at Hinterkaifeck. By nightfall, every person there would be dead. Days earlier, Andreas had found tracks from the forest to the farm. He found no matching trail leaving it. He also reported footsteps in the attic. He searched the space himself and found nobody hiding there. A house key disappeared. Andreas mentioned it, but he did not call the police. The farm remained open tonight. That Friday evening looked ordinary. Supper, chores, animals to feed, lamps to extinguish. Ordinary was the last thing the farm became. The next day the family missed church, then they missed Sunday. No one at the farm answered a door or window. Neighbors later noticed smoke from its chimney. The animals were fed. Someone appeared to remain inside after the killings. On April 4th, neighbors crossed the fields toward Hinterkaifeck. They expected silence. They found a locked-in kind of wrong. In the barn, they found 4 members of the family together beneath hay. The house held 2 more victims. The dead were Andreas Victoria, little Cecilia, young Cecilia, the maid Maria, and toddler Josef. Investigators believed the animals had been cared for, meals prepared, and the fireplace used after the family was killed. For days, perhaps, an unknown person moved between the barn and the rooms where the family had lived. Police suspected a mattock, a farm tool with a sharp metal head. But the weapon was not found at the scene. The attic noises returned to the investigation. If someone had hidden there, they could have watched the family for days. No witness saw a killer. No reliable confession emerged. The case would gather suspects, but almost no certainty. Attention turned to Lawrence Schlittenbauer, a neighbor connected to Victoria and present when the bodies were discovered. He had claimed he might be Josef's father. Andreas disputed it. That private conflict became a lasting shadow over the case. Police questioned Schlittenbauer repeatedly. He denied involvement, and investigators never obtained evidence strong enough to charge him. Travelers, former workers, criminals, even strangers from the war were considered. Each theory left a missing piece behind. The attic had food scraps, straw, and darkness enough to conceal someone, but records never proved anyone lived there. In 1922, the victims' heads were removed for examination. Decades later, they disappeared from the record entirely. Hinterkaifeck itself was demolished the following year. The place at the center of the mystery was erased from the landscape. In 1923, workers reportedly found a mattock hidden in the former farm's masonry. It was linked to the murders, never conclusively explained. That discovery suggested deliberation, not panic. Yet it arrived after the farm was gone, when crucial context had already disappeared. Investigators believed people were drawn one by one toward the barn. Whatever called them outside was never known. A loose animal, a sound in the barn, a trusted voice. Every explanation is possible. None is supported by a final witness. Reports said young Cecilia had torn out clumps of hair, suggesting she survived for some time after being attacked. Then someone remained near that silence, feeding livestock, using rooms, and leaving no verified trace of identity behind. For nearby villagers, Hinterkaifeck became more than a crime scene. It became a question sitting beyond the fields. Stories multiplied. A drifter, a jealous neighbor, a hidden lover, a ghost. The documented case supports no supernatural answer. What is known is frightening enough. Warnings were reported, 6 people died, and someone may have stayed afterward unseen. The bodies were not found for 4 days. During that interval, smoke rose, animals ate, and the farm appeared active. That detail does not prove a killer lived there, but it leaves investigators facing a second possibility. Someone returned afterward. Modern forensic certainty never arrived. The original scene was disturbed, evidence was limited, and time removed what investigators needed most. Schlittenbauer remained the name most often attached to Hinterkaifeck, but suspicion endured more easily than proof ever did. Accounts of the discovery fueled suspicion. He entered rooms and handled parts of the scene. In a chaotic search, meaning remains disputed. No one was convicted. No official solution closed the file. Hinterkaifeck remains one of Germany's most enduring unsolved murders. A century later, investigators, historians, and ordinary listeners still return to the same farmyard and the same missing exit tracks. The footprint story came from Andreas before the murders, not from a preserved police photograph. It is compelling but fragile evidence. Nearly every major clue has this shape, disturbing enough to haunt the case, incomplete enough to prevent an answer. The Gruber household carried private tensions and painful rumors, giving theorists motives. But rumors cannot identify a murderer. It was 1922. No DNA database, no surveillance, little forensic preservation, and a rural scene exposed to neighbors, weather, and time. Someone cared for the animals after the deaths, or someone arrived soon after. Either possibility changes the shape of the crime. Who could remain in that isolated house, surrounded by what had happened, and continue the smallest routines of farm life? One theory imagines an outsider, a drifter or criminal, who found an isolated farm, then vanished into the countryside. That theory fits the isolation, but not easily the key attic sounds or footprints Andreas reported before the killings. Another theory centers on someone who knew the family, knew the farm, and had reason to resent Andreas or Victoria. Schlittenbauer fit parts of that story, not all of it. The historical record never establishes him as the killer. The darkest theory says the killer was already there, inside the attic, barn, or walls, watching before the family understood. It could explain footsteps, missing keys, and fear. Yet no documented search produced a hidden person, belongings, or certain route inside. Outsider, neighbor, hidden watcher. Each theory explains something. Each fails where the case demands its final answer. Today there is no Hinterkaifeck farmhouse to enter. Only land, memory, and a crime scene reconstructed from broken records. Perhaps that is why the case endures. It leaves no final confrontation, only ordinary objects abandoned in an ordinary house. No account survives of the family's final conversation, final meal, or final glance toward the barn. The silence begins there. At some point, people left the warmth of the house and entered the barn darkness. The reason vanished with the killer. If they were called out one at a time, the killer understood the farm well enough to turn concern into a trap. It is an inference, not a fact. Hinterkaifeck demands restraint because its darkest details are also its least complete. Not the weapon, not a suspect. The image that remains is a stranger in the stable, doing chores after everyone was gone. The evidence suggests activity after the murders. It cannot tell us who acted, how long they stayed, or what they wanted. Was Hinterkaifeck a crime of resentment, opportunity, obsession, or proximity. The records leave every answer standing in shadow. Tracks arrived from the woods. A key vanished. Footsteps sounded overhead. Then 6 people disappeared into one unfinished story. There is no verified face, no final confession, no proven escape route. The person at the center is still a blank space. Hinterkaifeck feels close because it began with domestic details. A key, a roof sound, a road home through snow. A farmhouse should mean shelter. At Hinterkaifeck, shelter became isolation, and isolation gave the unanswered question room to survive. 6 people were murdered at Hinterkaifeck. The killer was never identified. The case remains officially and permanently unresolved. On the empty land where the farm once stood, the snow still has no memory of who walked away. Cases like Hinterkaifeck do not offer comfort. They ask what people miss when a warning appears ordinary. If this unanswered case stayed with you, follow void narratives. More true mysteries wait in the dark, documented and unresolved.